How deadly was dysentery for Civil War soldiers? Imagine fighting in a war where the biggest threat isn't just the enemy but also a disease that can strike without warning. That was the reality for Civil War soldiers facing dysentery. This illness was more than just a stomach ache. It was a major killer that affected armies on both sides. Dysentery is an infection of the intestines that causes severe diarrhea, often with blood and mucus. Back then, doctors called it the flux, the Tennessee trots, or the Virginia quick steps, showing how common and familiar it was in camp life. Nearly every soldier experienced at least one serious bout of diarrhea or dysentery during their service. Out of the 2 million men in the Union armies alone, almost 2 million cases were reported, but the real number was probably higher because many cases went unrecorded. Soldiers joked that bowels were of more consequence than brains, highlighting how widespread and disruptive the disease was. Dysentery could be deadly, especially when combined with poor nutrition, other infections, or wounds. The death rate from diarrhea and dysentery varied, but at times, about 0.78% of those infected died. That might not sound like much, but it meant thousands of soldiers lost their lives. In the infamous Andersonville prison camp, more than half of the deaths were caused by gastrointestinal infections and malnutrition. Out of about 45,000 Union prisoners there, 13,000 died, many from dysentery. Overall, about half of all deaths during the Civil War came from disease, with dysentery and malaria leading the way. Poor sanitation was a major factor. Camps were crowded, latrines were often inadequate, and clean water was hard to find. Without understanding germ theory, doctors couldn't prevent or treat infections effectively. Soldiers also lacked proper nutrition, which weakened their bodies and made recovery harder. Medical supplies were limited, and there were no effective medicines for dysentery. Quinine helped treat malaria, but nothing similar existed for dysentery. From a military standpoint, dysentery was a constant drain. Sick soldiers couldn't fight or march, and many were discharged because they were too weak. Morale suffered as soldiers watched their friends suffer and die from what seemed like a simple illness. Efforts to improve sanitation were made but often failed to stop the disease from spreading. The high rate of illness and death from dysentery slowed down campaigns and reduced troop numbers, prolonging the war. In the end, dysentery was a major health threat that shaped the course of the Civil War. It was deadly not just because of the disease itself but because of the poor living conditions, limited medical knowledge, and scarce supplies. It was a battle fought not only on the front lines but also in the camps and hospitals, where the fight against disease was just as fierce.